Welcome to the 2021 On-Farm Network Results Series. I'm Megan Burns, agronomist for the On-Farm Network program. Let's discuss our pea seeding rate trial results from this growing season. So this is actually a new trial type for 2021 that was developed out of some observations we made over the previous couple of seasons where we quantified plant stands in our pea fungicide trials, and we noticed a couple of things. So first of all, if we take a look at this graph here, this is a figure showing the average plant stand and plants per square foot related to the average yield for our 2019 and 2020 pea fungicide trials. And there's a couple of key takeaways here to understand why we developed our pea seeding rate trials for 2021. So the first thing to notice is that all of these plant stands for these 2019 and 2020 pea fungicide trials are less than what we would recommend as target stands in Manitoba for peas, which is somewhere around where this arrow is here. So we're seeing lower seeding rates than what we would recommend. However, we're seeing some pretty decent yields at stands that would be considered quite low relative to our recommendation. So this raises some questions like, are we leaving yield behind by not achieving these target plant stands? And also, why are the stands so low? So are farmers not seeding at rates that are high enough to achieve these target plant stands? Are our recommendations just out of touch and they don't need to be that high anymore? Or perhaps we're just seeing lower than expected survivability across the board, and we think we're seeding at high enough rates to achieve our target plant stands, but in fact, we're not. So this was kind of the array of questions that went into development of our 2021 pea seeding rate trials. So the trials looked to compare 3 different pea seeding rates that differed by a minimum of 20 seeds per meter squared. And the actual seeding rates for each trial were determined by what each farmer wanted to test who was hosting one of these on their farm. And the idea was to ideally have at least one of the seeding rate treatments be high enough to target the 80 to 90 plants per meter squared that we recommend as target plant stand. And ideally, we would have, one of the 3 seeding rates be lower than that, or targeting a plant stand lower than that, one of the seeding rates targeting right in that range, and then one of the seeding rates targeting a plant stand higher than that, to get a really good assessment of what was going on. But ultimately, it was up to each individual farmer, and we'll see how those seeding rates played out in the results. So we had a total of 6 pea seeding rate trials that were seeded this year. However, one of the trials in the Dauphin area was lost to late season hail. And then we had a trial in the South Interlake that was lost to drought. So we ended up with 4 pea seeding rate trials spread throughout the province that we were able to harvest this year and get data from. And those were comparing seeding rates between 65 and 135 seeds per meter squared. Now, I know that's kind of a weird way to think about seeding rates, but we'll put it in the context of bushels per acre as we move through the individual trial results. So starting out west with a trial in the Kenton area. So this trial compared 95, 115, and 135 seeds per meter squared. That's equivalent to 3.4, 4.1, and 4.8 bushels per acre seeding rates for this variety. We had 84% germination here, and we do take early and late season plant counts at all of our seeding rate trials. So you can see we have both the plants per acre and the plants per meter squared shown here. So recommended stands in Manitoba for field peas are between 80 and 90 plants per meter squared. You can see by R6, so by towards the end of the season, all of our plant stands at this site were lower than that recommended range. However, we didn't see any significant yield difference between seeding rate treatments, and then we see an associated decrease in profit per acre equivalent to that increased seed cost at those higher rates. So this will be a common thing you'll see when we don't have significant yield response. Obviously, we're not getting the return on investment, so to speak, in that increased input cost that we have with higher seeding rates. So we have an associated decrease in profit per acre as a result. So moving over to the Arden area, this trial looked at 65, 85, and 105 seeds per meter squared, which is equivalent to 2.2 to 3.6 bushels of seed per acre. So we had a bit higher germ here than we did at the last site. We're up at 93%, which is great. We actually were unable to collect plant stand data here, which was a bit unfortunate. And when it came to yield, we also didn't have a significant yield difference for this pea seeding rate trial either. And then, of course, we have that associated decrease in profit per acre with that increased seed cost in the spring. Okay, so moving to the Roland area. So this trial looked at 70, 90, and 110 seeds per meter squared, which is equivalent to 2.4, 3.1, and 3.8 bushels of seed per acre. And we had pretty good germ here too, 89%. So plant stands were fairly consistent here between our early stand assessment and our later stand assessment, which wasn't something that we saw very consistently throughout the 2021 season, just probably with the pretty dry conditions. So that was good to see at this site. Stands were lower, obviously, than our target range. So that was something that was consistent across 2021, whether it was pea seeding rates or soybean seeding rates that we were looking at. We generally speaking saw much lower stands than we were targeting. And again, you'll notice that all of those stands fall below our 80 to 90 plants per meter squared recommended stand. Again, we saw no significant yield difference between our pea seeding rate treatments here, and we have that associated decrease in profit per acre as a result. So the final seeding rate trial we were able to harvest was in the Dauphin area. This one actually had pretty low germ, around 70%. It was comparing rates of 70, 90, and 110 seeds per meter squared, which for this variety was equivalent to 2.9, 3.7, and 4.6 bushels of seed per acre. So not surprising with the low germ that we're seeing, pretty low plant stands, much lower than what our seeding rates would suggest we were targeting. And again, all of those plant stands, are below the target 80 to 90 plants per meter squared. So again, we're not seeing a significant difference in yield, and we have that associated decrease in profit per acre for those higher seeding rate treatments with the higher input cost as a result. So what can we take away from this first year of pea seeding rate data? So if we take a look at the 3 sites where we were able to capture plant stands and compare the expected survivability, which is in the orange bars here. So those orange bars show the plant stands that we would have expected for those seeding rate treatments based on the germination percents that we tested on the seed in the spring. And then we take a look at the plant stands that we actually achieved. You'll notice that plant stands are actually 20 to 25% lower than what we would have expected them to be after accounting for that germination percentage. So it may be the case that we're actually achieving lower stands than we intend to when we're selecting our seeding rates. Now, obviously, 2021 was a very dry year, and we're going to have to ask this question in a lot more years and a lot more places, just like we've done with our soybean seeding rate trials, to get a better idea of what's actually going on. And because it was so dry, we did see a lot of cases like this where, we probably didn't have as much germination and emergence as we would under more optimal conditions. So you can see a lot of skips in the row, or a little bit of staginess that could have played in, and there's more skips in the row here where it's really dry. So that's something that we need to factor into our consideration here, that 2021 wasn't necessarily a normal year. But is the drought really the main driver of that 20 to 25% less than expected survivability? Bringing back this 2019 and 2020 pea fungicide trial graph here, these stands are also reflective of much lower than expected survivability. So if we take a look at this data in relation to the seeding rates that the farmers reported for these trials, these sites have an average of just 59% survivability, so quite low as well. So while drought may have led to a large influence on survivability in this particular growing season, I don't think it tells the whole story. So I think we have to circle back to the 2 questions we asked at the beginning. Are we leaving yield behind, and why is survivability so low? So what it comes down to is we need more trials and more seasons to get at those answers. So that's what we'll continue to evaluate with future pea seeding rate trials, and hopefully we can shed some light on this and hone in on the optimal seeding rates for peas in Manitoba. So a big thank you to all of our on-farm network participants. If you are interested in learning more, getting involved, or if you have a trial idea, please feel free to contact us at any time. Thank you.